it's time for me to eat a little bit of humble pie and address a few things. So here goes.
All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. We've got a lot to talk about today, including Eddie Hall addressing the bets and the trolls, a potential new opponent for Hafthor Bjornsson that's not Logan Paul, and a lot more. But first, let's get into the bodybuilding news for the day. Blessing Awodibu posting another physique update at under 7 weeks out from the Indy Pro, where he will be making his return to the stage after a relatively disappointing season last year. The big question with Blessing that I think is potentially answered to a little bit further extent in this update is, will his legs be brought up enough to be more competitive in these lineups? In this update, you can see a nice side profile of his leg, his hamstring and quad separation, and obviously looking at his upper body, he's showing off one of his more dominant body parts, which is his back. Now, in this picture, I think his legs actually look really good, and that's the reason why I wanted to include this in this video. We've seen some shots of Blessing where you can see his legs, but it's still kind of hard to tell if they're going to be brought up enough to the point where, A, they're better than last year, and B, they match his upper body, because Blessing has a pretty big upper body. He's a big bodybuilder up top, but I think one of the two things that really held him back at his pro debut last year was the size of his legs relative to the upper body proportionally, and he looked a little bit flat and the conditioning was off. Those were the two things that I think held him back. So if he can bring up his legs and come in shape, I really still feel like Blessing can be a very competitive bodybuilder in these lineups. And he's going to have to go up against the likes of this guy, Justin Rodriguez, posting yet another physique update at under 7 weeks out from the Indy Pro. He's going to be doing both the Indy and the New York show. This front double bicep shot here, obviously we've talked a lot about Justin already. Really impressive season for him so far. Runner-up to William Bonac at that Boston Pro show just a few weeks ago. And I wanted to show Justin here, put it side by side with Blessing, even though it's a different pose, because I think likely these two guys are going to be in the same call-out at the Indy Pro. I think Blessing is also doing the New York Pro. They are so close together, just a week apart. But I think likely you will see these guys compared on stage in the same call-out, and I think it makes a good comparison here in the lead up to the show. So let me know who you guys prefer, Blessing or Justin, going into Indy and going into New York. But before we get to see Blessing and Justin on stage, however, there's a show coming up at the end of April, the Arnold Classic Brazil, where the headliner of that show and the guy that everybody's looking forward to seeing is this man right here, Rafael Brandao. I think by now we're close to 4 weeks out, around 4 weeks out, maybe even under. This is the latest update posted by Rafael. He won a pro show last year. He was invited to the Arnold Classic Ohio, but he was not able to make it, or he chose not to do it. And a lot of people are looking forward to seeing how he would have placed in a lineup like that Arnold Ohio. And I think likely he's the favorite to win this Arnold Classic Brazil. Also worth mentioning here, he is already qualified for the 2022 Mr. Olympia, so this is just kind of a bonus show for him. He's already an Olympian. He's already a show winner, and I think a lot of people are excited to see how that Arnold Classic Brazil lineup shakes out. Besides Rafael, who else is going to jump in? We really have no idea, and I think there is a chance that Rafael is the biggest name in that lineup, but I think there's also a chance that we see one or two big names surprisingly jump in that show. All right, now let's get into some of these strongman stories here. So what we know is that Hafthor is looking for his next opponent. He wants to continue his boxing career, and yesterday, the name Logan Paul came up. It was the top comment on his post. It was the pinned comment on his post, and I've heard that that is something that behind the scenes they're trying to make happen. Now, someone that recently called out Hafthor on a live stream clip, I've got the audio for it. I'll roll it for you guys right here.
JJ, can you beat Thor?
Yes, yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah. Bro, he'd be slow.
Oh,
if he catches me, yeah,
I can't back it. I can't back it at all.
You can't, no, but
He's
so
big.
big. Don't back me.
I rate you.
Logan 2 I did. Logan 2 I'm backing you.
Yeah, but you have to be fast. In and out.
If it's a block right, it's just gonna go through your fucking block.
No. So it's one of those things where because he's so slow. Like he's there.
He doesn't look that slow.
No, it is. You just get out of the way, and then while he's
You said that about the horse, bro.
but while he's like recharging to strike again, you can only hit him
spar
like
him? Can you spar him? I'd love to see you spar him. Please spar him.
Now, that was the voice of KSI. KSI is another YouTuber. In fact, the YouTuber that beat Logan Paul. Technically, I would consider it beating him twice. He faced Logan Paul 2 times. The first one was a draw. The second one he won. But KSI calls out Thor there, says he would fight him, says he thinks Thor would be slow, and he says he thinks he could beat Thor. And I know that KSI is looking for another fight as well. So while the Logan Paul versus Hafthor fight makes sense, him and Hafthor know each other, there's also this kind of 6 degrees of separation thing going on here, because technically it makes just as much sense for him to fight KSI because KSI beat Logan. He has that mutual contact with Logan because now Logan and KSI are business partners, and since Hafthor knows Logan's team, I feel like that could be something that they could make happen because they're like one person away. And I'm curious to know what you guys think about this in the comments below, because I was thinking about it yesterday. And obviously Hafthor, he's made it very clear he wants to continue boxing. There's going to be a rematch with Eddie Hall, supposedly. We're going to talk about that in a second. But I think other than Eddie Hall, other than a strongman, who is Thor going to fight that's going to draw ticket sales, that's going to sell pay-per-views, that's going to command attention? I honestly think if he fights a regular boxer, it's not going to have as much draw as if he fights a celebrity. I almost think the next fight to kind of be a good follow-up for the amount of hype that him and Eddie had has to be a big name like Logan or KSI, and not a professional boxer, but someone with boxing experience that you can make an argument for Thor actually beating. You don't want it to be like the Logan Mayweather thing, where Mayweather was so technically superior to Logan that it didn't really make sense. You don't want some boxer that's been boxing for 20 years to box Thor in the next fight, because no one's going to expect Thor to win. So if you're looking for an opponent for Thor with a similar experience level, it's probably going to be someone that's not a pro boxer, not an experienced boxer. So it's got to be someone with a big name that's already done some pro boxing fights, and KSI and Logan Paul both fit that bill. And I think Logan is probably in a similar predicament here, because it's not like he's fought Mayweather. So it's not like Logan can go back and fight another YouTuber and people are going to want to watch that, because he's already fought the top boxer in the world. Why would someone want to see Logan come down and box a YouTuber? He's going to have to box someone either more experienced than him or way bigger than him, which is the Hafthor situation. So as weird or as off the wall or as funny as it might seem for Hafthor to fight one of these YouTubers, I think this is a really realistic fight that could actually happen, either KSI or Logan Paul. It seems crazy, it seems weird, but I think this is very realistic that this could happen. So just bear it in mind, because I don't think it's impossible. I think this is, these guys calling out Hafthor, I think there's genuine interest there. Now, next up in the news, probably the reason why a lot of you guys clicked on this video in the first place. The moment that we've all been waiting for. Eddie Hall finally sits down in front of the camera and addresses the loss to Thor. And at the very end of his video, he talks about the things that we've been waiting to hear about. The bet with Larry Wheels, the bet with Hafthor, the money to charity, and the tattoo. So I'm going to give you guys the cliff notes of Eddie's video. If you want to watch the whole video, head on over to his channel. It's about 20 minutes long, so I wanted to sum it up for you guys here. He addresses his fighting style, and he basically admits that the detached bicep issue on his left arm was the reason why he was fighting that way. That combined with him, he admitted he went into this too emotional. So he does say that the bicep injury really affected his boxing. Now, as far as the overall tone of this video, I really liked it. I think Eddie did a really great job of being humble and gracious, and I think he even titled it, or had in the thumbnail, something like, "It's time to eat his humble pie." And I think Eddie really achieved that humble in defeat image that he was trying to portray. I think everything he said here was great. I think he really did a good job of giving Thor his props, and he addressed the bets at the end. Now, it was a very short addressal of the bets. The overall tone of the video was about the fight. It was about his family. It was about the fan reaction. It was about, him and Thor's rivalry being done now and, putting that in the past. But I do want to be clear here. He does say he wants the rematch. Even though the animosity is supposedly gone, he does want the rematch. And he says, so in response to the tattoo bet, he says he wants the tattoo to be in an official contract for a rematch clause, meaning he'll get the tattoo if the rematch happens. He says that there was no official writing in of the tattoo for the contract of this first fight. And there was no description of it. He says, Thor didn't, there's nothing in writing besides whatever Thor said in the YouTube video about how big the tattoo should be, what color it should be, what exactly it should say, all these details. And he said that's going to be a part of the contract for the rematch. So he addresses that. He addresses the bet to charity, and he says as much as what I assumed was that they haven't been paid yet, which I think is going to be an interesting situation, how much they actually get paid with the way this whole thing has been promoted. But he says once Thor announces that charity, that's in the contract, that's going to get done, the money is going to charity. And he also says he's a man of his word and Larry will get his $10,000. I believe that as well. It's just all waiting on things to get settled with the payments from the actual fight, which I do believe. I do believe that's going to be a tricky situation as far as them actually getting paid what they're owed, because it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense if the pay-per-view was free, where the money's coming from. So I think this is really all anybody wanted to see from Eddie Hall, just to see him address it, because Larry and Thor addressed it pretty much immediately after the fight and publicly addressed it. Really, it seemed like they were wanting this response from Eddie, like they wanted him to speak on this. And it's been over a week now, about a week and a half since the fight, that Eddie's now finally addressing it. And I think that was really all people wanted him to do, because it seemed like he was ducking it. It seemed like he was dodging it. And it seemed like he was ignoring the overwhelming fan response. Everybody wanted him to talk about it. It was all over his comment sections, and he addressed it. I believe that it's going to get done. I believe he's a man of his word, and I'm glad he addressed it. The only part that I didn't necessarily like was at the end of the video where he's talking about the trolls. He's talking about the media. He's talking about the comments that he's been receiving. And he brings up someone that actually took their own life, someone in the UK, in response to trolling and comments on the internet. I'm sure there are people being rude and disrespectful to Eddie, and probably people saying some unnecessary, unsavory things. But I think overall, this whole situation with people commenting about the tattoo, commenting about the bet, wanting to see Eddie deliver on his word, is because not only is Eddie Hall a public figure, not only was this fight a public event, but Eddie publicly put out these bets. He's the one that challenged Thor publicly on his YouTube channel to millions of people to the charity bet. He's the one that challenged Larry Wheels in public at an expo and then put it on his YouTube channel for everybody to publicly see. So I think if you're going to publicly put those things out there, you should expect a large public response of people trying to hold you accountable after the fight, especially when you don't speak on it after the fight. And again, I'm sure there is some online harassment and bullying going on with Eddie Hall that he probably doesn't deserve. But from what I've seen, especially in his comment section, it looks overwhelmingly like it's just fans that want to see him deliver on his word. I don't think it's bullies or trolls as much as it is people trying to hold him accountable for what he publicly put out there. But overall, I really liked Eddie's video. I like the overall message. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet already. As always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.